All right, everybody. Hello. It is 6:31. We are less than 30 minutes until the Texas debate will begin here in the WFAA studios. Really thrilled to be with you again, as I have been all night on WFAA Plus. I'm Teresa Woodard, a reporter and anchor here at WFAA. Thrilled to be joined by two absolute experts when it comes to Texas politics. We have Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, a regular on Inside Texas Politics. You're a very familiar face to us here in the WFAA studio and to all of our WFAA viewers as well. And Katie Sherrod. Katie is a former political columnist, a political commentator, and she is also the current communications director for the Episcopal Diocese of Texas, the North Region. And you know what, Jay, I'm talking to you on the side. We can hear you, so if you could turn off the echo in our ears. How does that sound?
Much better.
A little bit better, right?
Yeah.
All right. You know what? We're streaming on digital, so people can be more forgiving with maybe we have a few technical hiccups along the way. All right. So, Bud, Katie, we are ready. Are you guys excited for tonight?
I think so. I think I've been waiting for this all along. We got it booked. We got it scheduled. Channel 8 got this set up, and it was really great to have this and to have it here.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's important for the people of Texas.
It is.
This matchup, and I think it's an important race, and I think hearing from the candidates is always the best way for the voters to get informed.
You got it. And you know, I would argue, I don't think there's really any question about this. This is the biggest night in Texas politics of this year. Leading up to now, we haven't had anything in Texas politics that compares to how much tonight means.
Well, and I think people still talk about 6 years ago when Ted Cruz debated Beto, and
right.
So I think that those debates are what people remember. And remember that these events, this is the Super Bowl for Ted Cruz. He was a debate captain at Princeton. This is what he's lived for, grown up his whole life to do, is argue.
Yeah. Right. I mean, he is a supreme arguer. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's an Olympic class debater. Mm-hmm. And I think he is coming into this full of confidence. I think it will be a test for Colin Allred to see how he handles. Yeah. Because Ted comes on full bore, as we saw in previous years.
But I would say I have seen Colin Allred on the campaign trail this year, and there is some fire in that belly, no doubt. So we're going to continue to talk about sort of what we're expecting tonight, and I want you guys to help us set the stage. But for now, I just want to give everybody a little bit of a behind-the-scenes understanding of what's happening right now. We know that Colin Allred and Ted Cruz have both arrived. They are in our building here at WFAA. We are going to great lengths to keep their campaigns separated, and so we have one of them on the top floor of our station here at WFAA and the other on the bottom floor. You can see that's Congressman Colin Allred walking in. He was holding hands with his wife, Allie, shaking hands with our general manager here, Carolyn Mungo, as they are getting the stage set. We also know that Colin Allred and Ted Cruz have been down to our studio. They have done their walkthrough. Right now, I would imagine they're probably getting their microphones on. They've had a chance to look at the studio. They've had a chance to understand sort of the setup down there. They have had a chance to see what the camera situation is going to be like. We have big monitors in there that are going to be keeping them on track and counting them down. Now you can see some video from just a few minutes ago as Ted Cruz arrived here. You just saw earlier Colin Allred walking in. You can see Ted Cruz here now. We candidly have a lot of heightened security. I'm sure, Bud, you and Katie felt that as you walked in this afternoon. But we have to. I mean, this is a big night. And
they let us in, though.
They let you in.
They did.
I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that they did. They thought you were a shady character, but they let you in anyway.
Well, you know, this is very different. And I mentioned the Cruz and Beto debate that was at SMU before a full auditorium, and this is a studio event.
Right.
This is no audience.
No audience.
Just closed and just four people in the studio and head to head.
Yeah. All right, so let me give you a little bit of background information. Perhaps you have seen quite a few of the political ads that have been running across the airwaves all across the state of Texas, but particularly here in the DFW area. Really feel like we've been saturated. But I want to give you a little bit of information about these candidates because what you've seen in the ads doesn't necessarily paint the whole picture. So I'm going to talk first about Congressman Colin Allred. If we could put up some pictures and some video that we have of him through the years. So some background. Colin Allred is 41 years old. He's a native of Dallas. He likes to play up the fact that he is a fourth generation Texan. Colin Allred was raised by a single mom. She was a public school teacher. He went to Dallas ISD. He played football. He was class president at Hillcrest High School, and then he earned a scholarship, and he went on to play football at Baylor. Then he went on to play in the NFL for the Tennessee Titans. He was a linebacker, played in 32 games, recorded 46 tackles. I'm a sports fan, so I got to get in a little nugget like that. He went on to get his law degree from UC Berkeley. He became an attorney, focused on civil rights, voting rights. His entrance into politics came in 2018. He ran for Congress. He flipped a red district. He beat longtime incumbent Pete Sessions in 2018. So he's finishing up his third term in the U.S. House. He is married, as you saw earlier. He was walking in with his wife, Allie. He has 2 young boys, and he lives here in Dallas. Let's talk about Senator Ted Cruz, someone who has certainly been on the stage in Texas for quite a while, so people may think they know everything there is to know about him. But Ted Cruz is 53 years old. His father was an immigrant from Cuba. He moved to Houston when he was 4 years old or so. He went to private schools in Houston, but then he went to Princeton for his undergrad and he went to Harvard for law school. And as Bud and Katie mentioned earlier, he was a championship debater at Princeton. So we know that means he is very skilled in what he is going to be doing tonight. He clerked at the U.S. Supreme Court after law school. He actually worked on George W. Bush's campaign, and then in the Bush administration, he worked in the DOJ. He became Solicitor General for Texas, and that means he argued on behalf of Texas at the Supreme Court. 2012 is when he decided to run for U.S. Senate. He was a Tea Party candidate back then. That win in the Republican primary was a surprise. He went on to beat Paul Sadler by 16 points. But in 2018, when he was running for re-election, he only beat Beto O'Rourke by 2.6 points. He's running for that third term now. He's married, has 2 daughters, and he calls Houston home. So that's a little bit about the candidates, maybe some things you knew, you needed a little refresher on exactly who they are. But Katie, both of these men are attorneys, which means they know how to argue. But we've mentioned a couple of times that Cruz is a championship debater. So let's pick that apart a little bit. I mean, what does that mean for him tonight, and what does that mean for Congressman Colin Allred tonight? Katie, we'll go with you first.
Well, I think you're going to see a fire hose of words coming at Colin, because Cruz is really good at that. Talking fast, he's slick, his mind works very quickly. You can see it if you listen to his podcast. I mean,
yeah.
And he has a very good recall. I mean, he can pull up facts and figures from years and years ago, which I consider an impressive feat. But it also has a tendency to overwhelm people with words and details and numbers. And picking that apart, like I say, it's like a fire hose coming at you. Picking it apart to pick those points that you need to respond to effectively can be a real challenge.
And do we think, I think that there's a very clear difference when it comes to demeanor between these two men. So Bud, do you think that that will come across in a way that, as Katie said, Cruz shows absolute command of everything? Allred is known to be a little more quiet, maybe a little more even-keeled. What do you think that's going to mean for viewers as they watch?
Well, it'll be a little different. I keep mentioning the Cruz and Beto debate, but Beto, of course, was a rowing captain and not a football captain. He actually folded his arms and he would back away from Cruz. Cruz was such a force of energy from across the stage. I don't think we'll see Allred doing that. I think he'll stand his ground and be calm. It is going to be difficult for him to just respond so quickly to all the force that's coming at him in all of Cruz's comments. But I think that it's very important for Cruz tonight. This is his chance to close the deal and to make his points about Texas crime, the border, the economy. Allred is reaching for that last 2 or 3% and trying to convince middle-of-the-road voters or even Trump voters that he's the best candidate for them to vote for. So he has to take a couple of chances. He can't just play it safe all night.
Right. Plus, I think Cruz is trying to moderate his affect. He's trying to rebrand himself as more moderate, more potentially bipartisan, which I can't say without almost laughing out loud. I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see if he can pull that off.
Sure.
Because his brand is he is a firebrand. That's what he has done from the time before he was elected.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I think that is a really, for me at least, it was somewhat surprising as this campaign really got going to see that Ted Cruz was sort of backing away from all of his Republican bona fides and saying, you know what, actually I'm a bipartisan guy. And for me, I was a little surprised to see that. But clearly, you know what, they do what I know the numbers need them to do. And if they're seeing that that is making a difference, then they're moving the needle that way.
We've jokingly called it Cruz version 3.0 because you had Cruz, the original Cruz, and then you had the post-Trump Cruz, and now you have the Cruz reaching for the middle. And of course a lot of it is personality too, and whether he presents himself as somebody who knows everything about everything or whether he connects with the viewer.
Yeah. One more question, and then I want to show people what our debate setup looks like downstairs. Do you think these guys like each other? Do we know? What do we know about their relationship?
I know nothing about their relationship. I just know that I don't know of anyone that has ever said, "Oh, I really like Ted Cruz. I am a really good friend."
I think there are a lot of Republicans who would agree with that, but I think Allred has contempt for Cruz over January 6th, which is the way will probably come out of the debate.
Yeah.
I don't think that Cruz knows much about Allred at all, but he knows he's a Democrat.
And that's enough.
Yeah.
For now, I want to, if we can get ready the little tour of the studio that I was able to give folks earlier, Jay. I think we'll take a quick breath here and we'll play for you me just kind of showing you what it looks like downstairs as we are now 17 minutes away from the top of the hour. Oh, this is actually Jason Whiteley giving us a tour of the studio, so let's take a look.
Keen viewers of our newscast might have noticed some subtle changes over the last few days. Most of our newscasts have originated from the corners of our newsroom here with journalists working in the background. I want to take you downstairs to our studio and show you exactly why that is, though. We have turned our news studio into a debate stage for the biggest race on your ballot come November the 5th. This is the race for U.S. Senate, the one with Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. Both of the candidates agreed to meet here in our downtown Dallas studio to lay out their visions for the future. This hasn't been seen publicly yet, so I want to show you here. Both of the candidates will be at these lecterns on Tuesday night for the debate. The moderators will be right here. I'll be sitting in this seat. My colleague Gromer Jeffers from the Dallas Morning News will be over here. We'll have several clocks in the studio around for the candidates to watch to keep them on track so we can get to as many topics as possible here. We're calling it the Texas debate. No audience will be in the studio with us. We hope you can watch it, though. You can watch it on WFAA Tuesday night at 7 p.m. We're also streaming it on our streaming app, WFAA Plus. The Texas debate, Tuesday night at 7 in Dallas.
All right, so that was Jason Whiteley, who will be moderating tonight's debate, along with Gromer Jeffers from the Dallas Morning News. I want to talk a little bit more about this race, but I also want to give some insight. Gromer and Jason are veteran political reporters here in the state of Texas, right. Two of the most respected and admired, I would say, across the state, maybe across the country as well. They have done so much preparation for this. So much has gone into making sure that this is a well-produced debate behind the scenes, but also a very fair debate. And I know that they have really poured their heart and soul into what's going to happen tonight. So sending them good vibes. They don't need good luck, but I'm still sending it to them. All right, I want to just talk a little bit about why this race matters, the power of a U.S. Senator. But there may be some folks out there who are joining us who still don't really understand exactly the difference between what does U.S. Senate mean, what does the U.S. House of Representatives mean. So we've built a graphic that we're going to go through with you here just to give you some background. I know there's a lot of politicos who are watching and some people who are kind of nerdy like me who know a lot of these things, but there may be some folks who are joining us on these streams who are not quite familiar. So let's educate you a little bit. The U.S. Senate is considered the upper chamber. There are 100 members, 2 from each state in the U.S. They are elected every 6 years. So every 2 years, that means that a third of the body is elected. A senator has to be 30 years old, has to be a U.S. citizen for 9 years. They represent the entire state, so that's key. That is key to this race. That means that whoever wins this race represents the entire state of Texas. And when it comes to legislating, the Senate sort of follows more tradition and precedent. And this is also key because there are smaller numbers in the U.S. Senate. All of the members really have an opportunity to influence legislation. Now let's compare that to the U.S. House of Representatives. The U.S. House of Representatives has 435 total members. The entire membership is elected every 2 years. What does that mean? You have a new full U.S. House every time that a new session of Congress begins. A member of the House has to be 25 years old, a U.S. citizen for 7 years. Key difference, they represent districts, and those are drawn based on population. The body, sort of as a whole, adopts new rules each new session, and because of the size of the House, they really have to limit their debate. You could just imagine if they allowed all 435 members to weigh in on everything on the floor, nothing would, well, some would say nothing gets done anyway. But they do have to limit debate, so it's a little bit harder to influence bills in the House versus in the Senate. So let's talk about the power of a U.S. Senate seat. Bud, we saw this happen with Ted Cruz before. It's really a launching pad to more powerful position, that being a run for the president. We see a lot of times that comes from the U.S. Senate.
And I think he had planned all along to run for president. When he won the Senate seat, he was already planning to run for president. But I think one of the important points about his power in the Senate is that he's the ranking Republican on the Committee for Commerce, Science, and Transportation. If Republicans gain control of the Senate, he will probably be the chairman of that committee, which gives him even more power over American business, over the science and NASA, over transportation, rail, airport. So much of the country would be under Ted Cruz's control as chairman of that committee. All the senators work so tightly, and they all I won't say they all get along, but they all know each other really personally, and they all get really involved in legislation. You go over to the other chamber, 435 people. That's just like a big county courthouse there, where there's all these people that have all these kinds of opinions.
And they work a lot by caucuses, of around interest, or black representatives, or groups around special interest or demographics, and they get really good at creating alliances and building support in a way that the Senate doesn't really have to do that. But representatives have to know how, well, at one time they needed to know how to make compromises and how to make alliances. And you don't see that so much now, but it happens a lot more in the House of Representatives than it does in the Senate, mostly because of the size.
Sure.
And you see the House is literally representative of America. You have the X number of representatives for every state, while in the Senate you have 2 senators for everywhere. I was on vacation in Vermont recently, and I looked around and said, this place has 2 senators? It's like
I know, it's very different when you consider just how many people the senator from the state of Texas is responsible for versus the senator from Vermont.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's dive in a little bit as we are now, I keep looking at my watch because I want to keep us on time here. We're within 10 minutes of the top of the hour, so that means we're within 10 minutes of the Texas debate beginning. But let's dive into fundraising because I think it's really interesting to see some of these numbers. I remember in 2018 when it was Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke, it was a big headline because that was the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history at the time. Well, we have blown past that. So I think we have a graphic, and Jay, if we can start with the graphic that shows the most recent reporting, maybe those individual numbers. This would be from the third quarter of 2024. We know that Senator Cruz raised less money than Congressman Allred. So Allred reported bringing in $30.3 million. Cruz reported a fundraising total of $21.2 million. That's in the latest quarter. All right, now let's go to the other graphic, if we can, that shows the combined totals here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so in 2024 so far, Cruz and Allred combined for $132 million. Back in 2018, they raised $119 million through that entire campaign. As I said, one of the big headlines was, wow, this is the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. Well, we've blown past that. And to be candid, this is not the most expensive Senate race in the U.S. this year, right now, that's running in Montana. But what do we make of the fact that A, Congressman Allred has raised more money, and B, national money is coming into the state of Texas for the first time? Katie?
Well, I think it...
Maybe I shouldn't say for the first time in a long time.
In a long time.
Yeah.
But I think it shows that people feel that Ted Cruz is vulnerable. for the first time in a long time. Now, how vulnerable? I don't know, but they're willing to pour a lot of money in that to push Colin over the finish line. And this is a big state. It costs a lot of money to campaign in Texas.
And the big dollars that we're seeing them bring in is the reason we see so much of them on the airwaves.
Exactly.
And they have to be on the airwaves because how else do you reach so many millions of Texans?
I mean, you can do what Beto did and drive everywhere, which was pretty effective. I mean, it got him to within 4 points of winning, but I don't see Colin.
He didn't win any
it.
votes out in all those rural counties.
Well,
those goats and sheep didn't really vote for him.
Well, and now, come on, some of those counties actually have a Democrat or two. But I think that it does show that money it's what the fuel that, it absolutely, money fuels politics.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We have all the PAC money involved too, and all the
Right.
PAC money's pouring in because this is seen as a seat that can help the Democrats keep the majority in the Senate. And this is seen as one of the seats that Democrats might be able to win this year. It's always been a long shot, but it's a seat that's close. And so more money than ever is pouring in from all across the country. First of all, you have this national hope and magazine stories. There's and always these headlines say, "Is Texas turning blue?" And it's just like it comes up every election cycle, and it never turns out that way. But it's like people pour more money into Texas.
Sure.
And but the Democrats really need to keep the seat.
And we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the U.S. Senate right now.
Right.
I mentioned Montana earlier. We don't know if that's going to flip. And it's definitely the balance of power seems to be sort of hinging on a few key races.
And we have a huge influx of newly registered voters in this state
Yes.
that has introduced an intriguing bit of the unknown into this.
And in the Cruz and Beto race, the new Texans voted for Ted Cruz. Native Texans voted for Beto O'Rourke, the majority
That's
did.
interesting.
But the new people who had moved to Texas within the last, within recent years, were people who came for inexpensive property values or low taxes or conservative state, or just to benefit from the growing economy, and they kept Ted Cruz.
But one of the things they're seeing in this election is that you're getting first-time voters have registered.
Right. It's not all
and
people who just
that
moved
is
to
an
the state,
unknown,
right? Yeah.
because they have no voting
Right.
record.
Yeah, it's hard to predict. I looked it up the other day. There's more than 2.5 million new voters registered in the state of Texas since the last time that Ted Cruz was on the ballot. They're the great unknown. We just don't know what's going to happen with them. So, okay, let's kind of get you reset now as we are, just over 5 minutes away from the top of the hour from when our Texas debate is going to begin. I want to go over the debate rules with you so you're all set and ready and you can understand what happens as soon as the top of the hour hits and we begin the debate. Okay, so each candidate has 90 seconds to answer a question, and then their opponent gets 90 seconds to answer the same question. The original candidate will get 60 seconds for rebuttal, and then at the discretion of the moderators is another 60 seconds that they can maybe ask to clarify or somebody really didn't answer the question. When the debate begins, both candidates will get 60 seconds for their opening statements, and then as things come to a close, they will also get an additional 60 seconds for their closing statements. So as I said, we are about 5 minutes from the top of the hour when the debate will actually begin. I want to encourage you as you are watching to join our chat in YouTube, and maybe there's a question that you don't understand what happened, or you just want one of our experts here to sort of pick it apart for you and give you some better insight into what something meant. So send us either a DM on Facebook or Instagram with your questions. You can also reply. We have a Twitter thread going. It's pinned at the top of our page. Send us a question there, or you can enter the chat here live on YouTube as well. But as we are entering the last few minutes here, Bud and Katie, let's talk about what we think is happening with the candidates right now. What do you think is going on in these final few minutes, Katie?
Well, I have a question. Are they going to be fact-checked in real time?
I think there will be some of that, but I do believe that, sometimes you believe that the candidates will fact-check each other.
Right. I mean, since that sort of came up in the vice presidential debate, I thought I would ask that.
Yes.
I assume they will be fact-checking
one
another.
Right, for sure.
And I assume that they are doing whatever they need to do to get into the right headspace for this to get focused and ready to go.
If I believe the commercials, I think Colin Allred's wrapping the tape on his wrist, right, and writing something.
He's going to come out with his pads and his uniform on.
He's getting all ready for that. So.
Do we think that there is a particular issue that is a slam dunk for either one of them, and that is something that both, that either one is going to struggle with? Let's start maybe with a slam dunk, you think, Bud, for both of the candidates.
Well, I don't know. I think we know that Cruz will talk about the economy. We know he'll talk about crime and the border. I think Allred, we know he'll talk about abortion, and then he'll talk about January 6th. And that's a long time past now in people's memories, but I think those are two of his main topics.
A lot of Ted Cruz's commercials deal with the whole transsexual
Transgender
issue,
children.
transgender issue about boys playing in girls' sports. I have to believe he will bring that up. I mean, it has been a thing he's hammered at, and ad after ad after ad, even though it affects Texans' lives almost not at all. So I will be interested to see if that comes up, because he has really pounded it in his advertisements.
Do you think there are topics that are going to be difficult for either of them to talk about?
I think that Cruz will come at Allred on immigration really hard. And it will be interesting to see how Colin can come back and push back on that. I think that is going to be a place where I think Cruz thinks Allred is vulnerable.
Well, and Allred's grandfather was a customs officer in Brownsville. His family's from Brownsville, McAllen, and he has some sentiment about what's gone on the border. And he has attacked Cruz, saying that nothing's gotten done under Cruz. So the border, and let's face it, the topic's going to be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And Cruz is going to try to hang everything that's happened in the past 4 years on Colin Allred's head, and blame him for, even though he's one of 435 in the House, he's going to blame Allred for everything that's happened in the past 4 years and make it sound like that the economy is ruined and that it's all Colin Allred's fault.
All right, so we are just about 1 minute away. I've got the countdown clock up there, so 48 seconds or so. Bud and Katie and I are going to sit right here and watch the debate together, and we will be right back with you after the debate ends, and we will bring you wall-to-wall coverage with some live analysis for a couple of hours, most likely. We are also expecting to bring in Gromer Jeffers and Jason Whiteley. We will be able to go down to the spin room if the candidates decide that they want to go to the spin room after the debate ends. We will be able to bring you coverage from that. So a lot to look forward to in the last 18 seconds or so. I just want to say thank you for watching us here on WFAA Plus, and I want to wish my colleagues Gromer Jeffers and Jason Whiteley the best of luck as they moderate a very important Texas debate. This is a race that matters not just to Texas, but all across this country. So thank you for watching here on WFAA Plus, everybody. The Texas debate starts now, and we will see you right back here at 8 o'clock.